Good evening and welcome. It's a great pleasure to start this series of 4 lectures that we have this semester under the rubric of A New Innocence. This has been a little bit of a discussion and controversial title, and I'm really happy that Sou Fujimoto is here to give the first in this series. All the architects will have their own titles, and of course Fujimoto-san's title is Primitive Future. I think for those of you who are familiar with the history of Japanese architecture, you know that in many respects Japanese architecture has been very, in a sense, hierarchical in terms of its history. There was a time when Genzo Tange was really the main figure, and he was the one who got also to do many of the major projects and many of the projects in Tokyo. And then this was followed by the generation of people like Mr. Kurokawa, Mr. Isozaki, Mr. Maki, and I think this continued for a while, and really, it's from that generation and from the generation of the metabolist architects that then we have, for example, a contemporary figure like Toyo Ito. And I think Toyo Ito has been very, very influential for a whole generation of contemporary Japanese architects, because also Katsuya Sejima used to work in his office. And then she went on to have her own practice, and then of course later on she was joined by Mr. Nishizawa. Then I think more recently on the scene there have been a few really significant architects, and 2 of them I think will be here with us this semester. This is Mr. Ishigami and of course Mr. Fujimoto. I think the reason that we came up with this idea of a new innocence as the kind of overarching rubric for the series is that this particular group of architects are working in a very unusual way. They're working in a manner that's extremely light, to the point where the physical artifact of architecture reaches a level of ephemerality. It kind of is at the point of disappearing because of its lightness. Things get smaller and smaller. The size of columns gets smaller and smaller. And at the same time, there is an incredible interest in thinking about the relationship to nature and the relationship to landscape in a different way. Historically, when people have been thinking about the relationship of architecture to landscape, there is the architectural object, and then what's outside is landscape. But in a way, this group of architects have also been really, in a kind of interesting and systematic way, rethinking the relationship to landscape. So when we talk about collaboration, it's not really about the fusion of the 2, but in a way that one really thinks about landscape as the landscape of the interior, and thinks about the inside of the building in terms of a sort of rethinking of the relationship to questions of furniture, which I suspect we'll hear from Fujimoto-san, which actually also has a lot to do with the relationship of architecture to the body. And many of these things also go back to, for example, certain projects that were developed by Toyo Ito, like the urban nomad, and rethinking really the position of the individual in relation to the city, in relation to the piece of architecture. There are incredible nuances and variations in this. In fact, Toyo Ito's own work now is not necessarily following anything to do with this concept of lightness. So he's actually sort of a distinct figure, even though he has been influential in this. What I hope we will be able to share together, and that you'll find interesting, is precisely the focus that is given to a few individuals, and really going much more in depth in understanding, analyzing, and appreciating their work. The thing that I find very inspiring in the houses and a few of the more recent larger scale projects that Mr. Fujimoto has been involved with is actually the way in which the notion of clusters of small-scale elements come together to form new kinds of environments. And I think in the larger scale projects also that this connection to the body in terms of how buildings are used in ways that are really both very fresh and very inspiring. So I'm looking forward to the lecture, and I hope that you will join me in welcoming Mr. Sou Fujimoto.
Good evening. I'm Sou Fujimoto from Tokyo. And thank you very much for inviting me to this really precious opportunity. It's a great honor. And this whole full lecture series title is New Innocence. And I remember I heard that sentence from Mosen-san in Tokyo in the morning when we have a breakfast with Toyo Ito. And then I got a rather shocking inspiration, which gave me a new understanding of what I'm doing. Because I was using this primitive future title for these few years. And that means going back to the beginning of architecture and behave just like you or I don't know anything about architecture. And then starts to think about architecture. Then we will find everything's new. So we have to reconstruct, rethink, or redefine what it is. What is architecture? What is the behavior of the people? Or what is the relationship between human body and the space? That is really, really exciting things for me. And that primitive means such kind of a really fundamental relationships between the human body and the space, and then to think about future architecture. So that is a really, really innocent attitude to architecture. But I think innocence means really fundamental, and start again to think about the fundamental part of architecture. So I think this lecture series, of course, 4 of them, or 5 of us, no, them, but 5 of us, has a different approach to architecture. But such kind of a fundamental attitude is we can share. So today I'm talking about for an hour, and talking about my project. So could you turn the light down? Okay. So, yes, okay. Yes, the first question is nest or cave. And both is really, really, I can say, the beginning of architecture. But I think these two is really different or opposite concept. The nest, I like to say, the nest is the place or the space well prepared for people. So for example, the functional architecture is the nest for the people. It is designed for people, well prepared for people, so we can, how to say, use the space very, very conveniently. This is the famous Le Corbusier drawings, and this is representing how the functional architecture is. So you can put many, many walls or functional things in it, and then prepared for you or us or them, and then it is very, very nicely designed nest, I think. And then, what is the cave? I like to say cave is a space not designed for people. So it is completely opposite. So because the cave has been existing before people, so it is just a, how to say, natural created landscape. So no relationship with people or human body. That is a big difference. But I think it is much more creative thing to live in the cave. When you are entering in the cave, then at first you will be very embarrassed. But then gradually you will find some kind of a, how to say, the bigger space, cozy space, this kind of landscape, and then you will find your comfortable space, or you will find some place to put these kind of things in it, or you will find some place to sit on. Gradually, you will have some kind of a nice relationship between your body and the space. It's a kind of a really creative things to find a space or to get an inspiration from the landscape and to innovate the function in it. So I think the nest is, in a sense, not innocent. The cave is more innocent. And then if you are in the cave, then you will find new relationship between the space and your body. And it is, I think, really, really exciting thing. So the functional architecture is not so bad, but in this 21st century, I hope more cave-like creative relationships is more and more rich experience for people. And this is my first trial to translate such kind of a cave-like space to real architecture. And I intended this is a house, a future house. And the point of this project is this many, many, many steps. And I made this gap 35 centimeter. So if you like, you can sit on, or double size 70 centimeter, you can use as table, or each steps you can use as bookshelves or the stairs, you can go up and down. This whole area is like a landscape, and there is no function. But if you react to this space, then some specific function is emerging. So this is the drawings. So you can see various kinds of the same gaps, the 35 centimeters, but how to react is very, very various. And sometimes, of course, this space is designed for people, but sometimes the animals is coming in and they behave as they like. So it is more and more primitive landscape for people or creatures to behave as they like. And this is the first model. So the outside shape is also very, very, blurring, so that the people can use this rooftop as well as a landscape. And this is the photo I took in Vietnam. This is as you know, the typical Asian market, really chaotic situation with many, many items she has to sell, but she don't like to sell. And finally, she found her own comfortable space in this chaos to sleep. It is the really, really innovative things. So I was really surprised and took the pictures. And yeah, she's sleeping, and then another girl is sleeping. So yeah, in Vietnam market, really creative things is happening. And this is my office. The same chaotic situation with many, many models. And I hope he's my staff and he will find his own comfortable space in this chaos. And this is Bangkok. This is on the street, so you can see the real trees. So outside, really chaos. But it is like a really comfortable house. And this is my office. So I like to say, in such a kind of a chaotic situation, but people can find and can arrange our own comfortable space, and you can find your own comfortable functions in it. And then I translated such kind of things by these many, many small steps. And this project is designed in 2001, the year 2001, and deeply influenced by Toyo Ito's Sendai Mediatek, you know, the famous project. And I'd like to explain that point a little bit more. You know, the Sendai Mediatek has two shocking points for me. One is make the really solid usual column to much more spatial column. You know, the usual column is made by, for example, concrete or really solid things. But Toyo Ito make it small pieces and make a tube-like space inside. So he changed a solid column to a space. It's a really shocking thing. Then I thought, yeah, Toyo Ito do it in the columns. Then what happens in the different elements of the architecture? And how about the floors? So I divided the floors in small pieces and make it in the space. So there is, we can say there is a lot of floors, but at the same time there is no floors, but just the layers of the space. And then you can react to the floor-like space, landscape-like things. Or, yeah, for example, in this area, the wall is also divided in small pieces and created in a space. So Toyo Ito did change the object to the space, and then we react to such kind of a shocking things and change the floor to the layers of the space, or change the wall, solid wall, more space-like things. So this project doesn't look like a Sendai Mediatek, but deeply influenced by that. That is the one point. And another point is, could you remind the Toyo Ito's Sendai Mediatek's plan? The square and many, many circles in it. So it represents no functions in it, just a space, the floating space. But he said people can react to this circle shape like a tube-like, tree-like space. Then people react to the density of the tubes or the openness of the tubes. They can select the space and they can do some activities depending on the size of the activities, depending on how open or how protected, something like that. So he said in the Sendai Mediatek, the space is not prepared for people, but just giving some kind of he said, a forest-like space. Then people can select the space according to their behaviors. So this kind of thinking about provide just a landscape-like things, and then people can select depending on the size of the gaps, or depending on the numbers of the peoples, or depending on the seasons, situations. So such kind of a fundamental level, I get a deep influence from Toyo Ito's Sendai Mediatek. So I think, of course, this project doesn't look like him, but influence, big influence, could be translated in a different way, and then could be an architecture. So I think it's very, very, how to say, nice translation. And again, this is a Le Corbusier. And I like to show the good contrast between modern architecture and my proposal. Yes, as this drawing clearly shows, the modern architecture like to divide architecture clearly, define simply, and assemble them together again. I like to say the architecture itself is really, really complicated things, but he said only 3 elements is making architecture: the floors, the columns, and the stairs. So simplify the situation, divide architecture clearly, and defining that element clearly, and assemble them together. That is the, how to say, machine-like, really clear attitude of modern architecture. On the contrary, this project, yes, you can see, for example, this is like a floor, but if you say this is a floor, but other people come and this is not the floor, this is a bench, or this is a stairs, or this is a chairs, table, something like that, then it shows in here you cannot say what it is or what is not is or something. I mean, all the slabs, the meanings of all the slabs are melting together to create some blurring things. And then the meanings, if you react to this landscape, then the meanings is coming. And then other people is coming, then different meaning is coming. So no clear definitions, no clear divisions, but these blurring landscape-like things. And the only things we can see is when we react to the space, then some specific functions or some specific things is coming. So everything is depending on our relationship between the space and the body. It's clearly different from the pre-defining system of modern architecture and how to say post-defining or no-defining. But yeah, I don't know how to say, but such kind of a contrast of this project and modern architecture. And of course, that previous project was a really conceptual things, but I got an opportunity to realize this idea in a different way. I won the competition, but it's a really strange things, funny things, but the jury, head jury was Toyo Ito, and he selected this idea. This is designing a small wooden house competition. So we proposed to use a solid wooden block, but the idea is the same, the 35-centimeter gap to make a landscape. So stacking solid wooden block, 35 centimeter, then create the whole architecture. This is a really small house, and 4.2 meter, and about 4 meter. And the space is, how to say, spiral, three-dimensional things. So even though it is really small, but the experience is much bigger than this size. And the concept is the same, 35 centimeter, and the different levels. There is no clear 1 story, 2 stories, 3 stories, but different levels and the different functions according to your behavior on it. And of course, we made many models because there is no clear floor plan. So we just understand this space by models. And then we adjust, and then again and again. But of course, we have to draw many drawings to realize this house. So this is about 4.2 meter, 4 meter house, but we had to draw 12 sections and another 12 sections and 12 plans. So it's kind of like a high-rise building, but it's really small. And then this is a real solid wooden block. And stacking and finished. And you can see glass is here and glass on the roofs. And this has a shower room and the toilet and the kitchen. So it is a really small but the real house. Here, you will see how strangely people react to this space. And she and here is in the different levels, and you will see some unknown, mysterious steps. And of course, it has the sleeping space, 2.1 meter and 70 centimeter, very tiny sleeping space. It has 5 different sleeping spaces. And as you can see, this is the most dangerous sleeping space. But yeah, if you like, you can select. And if you don't like, you can select much more safer sleeping space. And the tricky chairs. But yeah, you can use this whole space, or not the space, not even the space, but the whole, how to say, steps, areas, according to your feelings, or according to how many people you have. You are alone, or you have with 2 or 3, or much more. I saw once, maybe 3 years ago, yeah, we had a workshop in here, and I saw 30 people were in there. It was a really crazy situation, but it's possible because each guys are in here and here. So finally, 30 people are stuck inside. And then now, I'm designing one private house. Not exactly the same idea, but the similar ideas. This is a private house in Tokyo, and now under construction and will be finished the end of March. But this is a private house for a couple, but the site is really small. So we gave up to have a rather smaller big living area, but we divided each areas much more and more smaller. So each floor is, for example, 1.4 meter and a 2 meter or such kind of a furniture-like scales. And then we stacked, but more, how to say, landscape-like stacking. So each space is not completely divided, so you can sit on it to join to this next space, or you can feel the whole space as on one room, but at the same time, each furniture-like slabs, floors, is your own, how to say, rooms. So you have many, many rooms, but at the same time, only one room. We made many, many models. Yeah, this is looks like a huge house, but this one is only one house. And like this, so you will see, yeah, of course, this is a furniture, but this is a slab. And this is another slab. This is a furniture. So in here, the furnitures and the architecture is now melting together. Of course, you can use the chairs or sofas, but at the same time, you can use the slabs, the edge of the slabs as the benches or sofas, or something like that. And the client really liked this house, but he said at the first meeting with me, he and his wife are living like a nomado in his house. So I got an inspiration, of course, Toyo Ito's nomado, but I think I can make some kind of a nomadic house, living like a nomado within a small house. So we can provide many, many different areas, many, many different relationships. Then they can select their areas as they like, depending on their feelings or depending on the situation. This is a private house. And yeah, I was talking about the cave. But the cave is not necessary to be a, how to say, cave-like space. It could be more open like things, I hope, because then the possibilities or potential of the caves is much more getting bigger. So in here, I like to create some kind of an open cave. And then I try to create some kind of a in-between space, between inside and outside, or between city and a house. I like to mix such kind of a inside and outside, or house and city. This is a private house, but it's rather strange. I can say simply this is a big box, middle box, small box. So box in box in box house. And you will see this is a big box, and a middle box, and small box. And this big box is covering almost whole the site. But it has, of course, it has many, many openings, but there is no glass on it. So inside of this big box is outside. So the rain comes in, the wind blows, so the trees is growing here. And then middle box, it has glass and skylights. So inside of this middle box is now inside, but still outside of this third box. And then this box in box in box systems could make some kind of a positively confusing situation of inside and outside. I can say outside of this middle box is inside of this big box, or inside of this big box is outside of middle box, or something like that. So here, definite definition of inside and outside is now blurring. So I like to explain this is a usual house, inside and outside clearly divided. But here, I hope you can see this very tint gray. Inside, deep inside, rather inside, less inside and outside. Such kind of a gradient situations is happening. And this is inspired by my personal experience. I was born and grown up in Hokkaido area. Hokkaido is a northern island of Japan and a really countryside. So, and it's really cold like here in Boston. So we have to make precise inside, huge installations, and outside. So in my childhood, this was my house, inside and outside. It was no problem. It works very well. But I moved to Tokyo when I entered to university, and then I found that in Tokyo, the situation is a little bit different. In Tokyo, as you know, the room is very small, so inside is very small. But if you open the door, then you can find some corridor. Corridor is, for example, 1.2 meter wide. It is narrow, but not so narrow than your own room. Then you go down to the street. Then street is 2.4 meter wide. So it is narrow and surrounded by many, many two-story wooden houses. So if you are inside is very small. But if you go outside, small pieces is surrounding you. If you're going down to the street, then two-story small houses and the electricity cables are surrounding you. So I felt such kind of a clear division of inside, outside is not anymore in Tokyo. More, I felt inside is okay. But if you go outside, it's gradually getting outside. And I found at first it was very strange, but gradually I found it is much more comfortable because you can select how deep you are inside or how far you are outside or in between. I'll show these diagrams. Here, one wall, inside and outside, or 0, 1, or black and white. Everything is clearly divided, like a modern age. But if you make such kind of a gradient situation, then inside, outside, but you can select in between situation. So simply, I can say, it has much more options for you to select according to your feelings. Inside and outside, you have only 2. But in this gradient situation, you have more. Then the life in this gradient situation is more rich, I thought. So in such kind of a very, very simple, innocent inspirations take me to design some new house and straightly translate to this idea to architecture. So here, this is the plan of this house. Big box, middle box, small box. This is really, how to say like this, big, middle, small, simple gradation. And then as a section as well, big box, middle box, small box. And this big box, there is no glass, so this area is outside, and this area is outside. And this is the size of the site. So it's a kind of a, how to say, inverse of thinking or planning to make a huge box on the site or to make a house, but including that house and garden, another box, another big box is covering everything. Then it is realized. You can see the surroundings is the usual Japanese typical housing area with 2-story houses, and these houses, not so old houses, maybe 20 years old or something like that. So it is really strange urbanscape in Japan. And then this is my house. It looks so strange in these surroundings. But I like to say the surroundings is so strange. Because it is, how to say, no design, but just how to say, just usual houses. But I have to say, of course, this house looks very big, but not just a huge disturbing house, but from the street. This big box is of course very big, but it has many, many openings. And the inside of this big box is outside. Then, as a result, you can see through this house to the skies behind, or you can see through this house to the house, neighbor's house behind. So it is a kind of a translucent, or I don't know how to say, semi-transparent house or existence. So it is very, very strange because this wall is made by concrete, so it's very heavy, but at the same time, it has some kind of a transparency. And inside we have many trees, so it is new existence in this area, in this city. And inside of this big box, you will see some covering, and then it has no glass, so openness and protected feelings are existing together. And this is a view from the small box. You can see this is a small box, and a middle box, and a big box, and the sky. And sometimes when the cloud is coming, then much more bigger something is covering you. So these 3 layers of openings, the 3 layers of the box, could create some kind of a, how to say, strange distance of the house, or strange expanding feelings of the house. You can see 4 skies above, and in the real situation, you can see much more, many skies. So you can feel so much open feelings. But at the same time, 3 box is protecting you. So well-protected feelings. Openness and well-protected feelings are existing together. And I think that kind of openness and protected feelings is the really fundamental elements of the house. House is designed to protect outside, but at the same time, you like to feel such kind of openness. So how to create such kind of a coexistence of the openness and protected feelings is the fundamental theme of house, I think. And this is designed for such kind of a really fundamental aspects, and to create some kind of layers or depths of the space. And this is really 15 years old drawings by me. I was pursuing this box in box in box system for this 15 years, I have to confess. This drawings made by me just after my graduation from university. And I was very interested in such kind of in-between situations. Or I like to challenge, to destroy the clear division of inside and outside, because inside and outside is the most fundamental things of architecture. So in this case, I try to create box in box in box, and the inner box is much more private things, and the outer area is more public social area. And this is a house, but there is no boundary of this house. So the bigger box, or the biggest box, could be a size of the city or something like that, I imagined. But at this time, I was thinking about using the translucent glass or frost glass to create such kind of layers. But of course, it's, how to say, it doesn't work. And of course, it's just a conceptual project. And after 10 years or 12 years, I happened to realize that kind of a box in box system by using this solid box with many openings. And then we can control the openness and the closeness by the position of these openings. And then we can use the reflection of these kind of ceilings and the roofs of the small box to the ceilings. So to create some kind of a gradation of lightings and space, the gradation of the light and space. This is the really typical Japanese urbanscape. This is a neighbor's house, small wooden 2-story house. And yeah, you will see this is a futon. Futon is a sleeping things. They are now drying here. And with small greens and ugly traffic signs and something very dangerous, but I don't know what it is. And the different styles of the houses and the electricity lines, so crowded, so chaotic. And we proposed to create this white box. But the important point is, inside of this big box is almost empty. There is, of course, trees, but we design just the air volumes, the volumes of the airs. And here I like to say, to design architecture is not just design an object or a building itself, but to create some kind of a volume of air where people can behave variously. And inside of that volume of air, we can make some kind of a solid building-like things or garden-like things, the furniture-like things. But the most important thing is to create some kind of a territory-like volume of air. I understood such kind of things by this project. So here, empty, and the real house starts from this corner. So you can see how big box is so big. Of course, the very, very big problem was how to persuade to the client to make such kind of a emptiness for their house. Because emptiness is just emptiness. And this big box is the most expensive part of this house. So I have to say, you have to pay a lot of money for this emptiness or something like that. And yeah, that is every time that kind of things is happening. But fortunately, in Japan, we have a nice tradition to admire emptiness. So, not wasting, but the paying a lot of money for emptiness is so nice. And of course, that means emptiness has such kind of a richness inside. And of course, we have a tradition of in-between sense of space. You know, the Engawa space, in-between area, inside and outside, but not inside, not outside, but in-between space. So Japanese traditional architecture has such kind of empty feelings and in-between feelings. So I translated such kind of nice traditions, very, very important traditions, to more contemporary architecture things. I think that is because that is why this area is really comfortable. Because this area is outside, but well covered by this roof and walls, so nicely protected, comfortably feelings. And then you can select this outside, inside area, or more inside area, or more and more deep inside area, depending on your feelings, or depending on the seasons or time or the situation. So such kind of providing the varieties or the space, variety of the space for people to select is another aspect of the concept of the cave, I think. So this is not like a cave, but it is an open cave-like space. And then this is another trial to create such kind of a volume of air for a house. This is a private house. This whole thing is a private house. And we stacked small boxes with many, many trees. And each box is a very small, but each small rooms. And then when we stack, we can make such kind of a in-between space. Some area is covered by roof-like things, and some area open, and the top of this box is like a roof terrace. And of course, if we have many, many trees, so some area is well protected by trees or open or something like that. So by these stacking boxes, stacking trees, or stacking tree pods, then we created the whole volume of air. But it has dense area, less dense area, open area, protected area, so various area inside. So this area is inside, but covered by this roof-like volumes. Each room is very small. That has two reasons. One is I like to create this whole situation much more like a landscape. So people can feel to go up, to climb up, to walk around whole situations. So if we make it, for example, 4 meter, something like that, then it is like architecture. But we selected sometimes 2 meter or 2.5 meter. Then it is the size you can feel. You can climb up or going up or something like that. Another reason is, of course, this room is very small, 2 meter, 2 meter, 2 meter sometimes, but one surface, the whole one surface is the window. So the room is small, but the whole surface is window and the facing to the garden, protected garden. Then some kind of a new relationship between inside and outside could be happening. Inside is very small, so if you are inside, but you almost exposed to the outside. Such kind of a nice or challenging relationships I tried. And this plan is really random things, and this random layout is one of my the pursuing themes. To create no straight rules, but create the space only by local relationships. Each element, box, trees, or space, in between space, has its own networking-like relationships. Then it is not necessary to have a big one spine or a big one flat slab, something like that. But more small pieces, networking, then create new order, I hope. So I tried these kind of things. And then realized, you can see how this box is small compared to this size of the people. And the trees above, this is the autumn, so the colors of the leaves are changing. And in the summertime, the green is more growing. So the boxes are now vanishing, disappearing, and the trees is the main part. And from above, here, with many, many stairs. So we put many stairs so that you can, for example, go up from here and come inside this box, go down by ladder, and then go out from different the entrance. So you can select various routes to go up and down and experience inside and outside and outside, inside. Such kind of a networking of experience of each boxes and outer area is the main part of this house. So the size of the house is really small, but the experience is, in a sense, endless chain-like things. And here I can say a little bit conceptual things. I was talking about the small pieces, relationships, or networking order of the relationships of small pieces. And I like to explain the contrast, good contrast of the modern architecture and such kind of a new order. By using this music score. This is the music by Bach, but that is not the problem now. The main part, the point of this story is this system of this music score. You can see the lines and these lines defining the flow of the time. So I like to say this music score system is very similar to modern architecture system. Why? This is, in here, the time is flowing before music. Time is flowing behind the world, I like to say. So this definition of the time is existing before every note. And then you will put many, many notes on it and create a music. So in here, the time is like a universal. this flowing behind the world, and then you can play on that time. And this is, I think, very, very similar to the modern architecture. Here, the grid system, the column is on the grid. So in here, the modern architecture, the space, it's spreading behind the world, before everything. There, we can say universal space. Then we can put many, many things to create some kind of a functional things. So the concept is the same. This lines is the grid system of the modern architecture. And then Mies van der Rohe, what he did was really shocking, inspiring things. Yeah, I'd like to explain. What he did is like this, vanishing all the nodes. So Mies says, architecture is not such kind of every kinds of nodes, but to make a form or to give a form to this underlining or underflowing time or undergoing space itself. So Mies says, this is an extreme music or just a universal space. Nothing is the extreme architecture. And that is really, really shocking things, because after that, after this, if we put something to create architecture, then it is just a funny playing on the Mies background. So we could not beat Mies anymore. If you play on it, you're just playing on it. So I try to change the situation. Again, this is the back. I try to change the situation completely. Then erase the background flowing time. So in here, there is no time flowing behind the world, or there is no space spreading behind our world, no grid systems. But I like to say here, different kinds of time starts to flow. Which kind of times? Here, nodes. Here, nodes. So in the relationship between these two nodes, some kind of time starts to flow. Or I can say time itself is the relationship itself between these nodes. So I like to say, in here, the time is flowing, no relation with these nodes. But now, the time is flowing in the relationship between these nodes. And the time, we can say, as a space. In the Mies architecture, the space is spreading before our architecture. But now, we can make such kind of a relationship itself, or local relationship, or networking local relationship. Then we could create different types of space itself. So I like to say, for example, this small element, and with many, many trees. And of course, if you are inside, then you are a part of these elements. Each element has its own relationships to each other to create the new space or new experience. So I like to say architecture is not defined without people inside, in this case. So this is the one of the trial to create such kind of a new order systems, different from Mies van der Rohe. And like this, on the ground floor, rather covered area, open area, trees with many stairs. And you can go up. And this project is commissioned by Toyo Ito. And he selected 3 architects me and Mr. Fujimori, Terunobu Fujimori, and Taira Nishizawa, the brother of Sanao Nishizawa. And each of us designed each private houses. And Toyo Ito designed a pavilion. And then this is the, how to say, the finishing party. And yeah, we have such kind of a happy end. But yeah, and the client is a big company, Tokyo Gas Company, gas supplying company. So I don't know exact reason why such kind of a big company is doing these rather crazy project, but they like to promote the new lifestyle. So we created some kind of a new lifestyle model house. So this house is not designed for specific family or specific client, but this is more experimental model house. And yeah, Toyo Ito. And this is Taira Nishizawa. And environmental engineer. And client. So, yeah, I hope he is not angry. I've heard after that, yeah, he was very, very satisfied with that. And this time he's just sleepy. Anyway, okay. This is an interior view to look up. So we put the glass, so the rules to create a space is the same, but the interior, exterior we created. Look down. And of course it has many, many different trees, so it changed the colors, and sometimes it has flowers. So such kind of a various whole experience and the whole situation is this house. Oh, sorry. And you will see how the room is small comparing to this furnitures. But the whole one wall is a window. So nice, too much straight relationships between garden, outside, and inside. Okay, this is the last project, my new library. And this is a library for Art University. And you remember Toyo Ito designed library for Tama Art University with many, many arc. And Tama Art University and this Musashino Art University, both are in Tokyo. And these two are very, very good rival. So after Toyo Ito's library, Musashino University thought, we have to make a library too. And then, but the Toyo Ito is a great master, so they thought, we have to do the commission much more younger generations. I don't know the reason, but they decided. And then they did a limited proposal competition. And finally, I was selected. So it was thanks for Toyo Ito and thanks for the Musashino Art University. But it was really lucky situation. But it was really big pressure project because on the one hand, Toyo Ito and I have to do something like that. So I did completely different strategy. And I like to create some kind of a library of library. So again, I go back to more innocent attitude. Library is the place where many, many books are. And the library is the place where the people is coming to read books. That is really, really fundamental. But I like to do it really straightly to create the library. And then this is the very, very first sketch. The bookshelves is growing. Then it is creating some space for people. And then growing to be a big library. And this is the study model. Not exactly the final one, but bookshelf wall is growing including the spaces for people. Finally, it's a huge library. And this bookshelf wall is sometimes double height, so 9-meter high or something, but it has many, many openings. So you will see these layers of the bookshelves. So it's a kind of an endless library. And I have to say, I was inspired by the Jorge Luis Borges story, The Library of Babel. And it is a kind of a infinite experience of library, or library as a world. So of course, as a geometry, it is completely different from Borges' story, but I try to create such kind of the whole world-like library. But of course, this spiral system is not just how to say, imaginary things, but we did a deep research and discuss with the client, and finally, we found two really fundamental aspects of library. Here, one is searchability, to find the books easily, and another one is scrollability. And the searchability is much more easy to understand. It's the very, very simple principle of library. All the books has the numbers and categories, so you have to make the layouts really systematically. So it is the very important things. But at the same time, we thought, if you are in the library, then of course sometimes you like to find some books, but sometimes you just like to walk around to get some inspirations, just like walking in the forest. That is, I think, another very important aspect of the library. But I have to say, these two things are completely opposite concept, because searchability is really systematic. So usually we lay out the bookshelves parallel endlessly. So it is systematic, but it is not so nice place to strolling. It is boring. But on the contrary, if you like to make some kind of a strolling, very, very walking around space, then it might be really chaotic situation. So how to integrate these two aspects together in one system was our challenge. And then after many, many studies, we found these spiral shapes. Here, if you are in the center, then this spiral is like a radial system. We can lay out the categories on the line, just like the numbers of the clock. Then, if you are in the center, you will see which categories, which directions, every category is surrounding you, and you can go which do you like. So it is, in a sense, really, really systematic system, but not like a usual parallel grid systems, but the more radial systems. And then, of course, this spiral shape is still really, really old shape of labyrinth or maze, I think. So with many, many, of course, with many, many openings. Then, if you are inside, you will see something interesting through these openings far away you go. But then you will see something different here. Or in this spiral shape, you cannot see the end of the space because the space is curving. So such kind of you cannot see the end makes you to walk more and more to such kind of directions. Or because of blocked by the walls or blocked by this curved wall, then expectations is happening to invite you, to lead you to more and more. And then the sequence of expectations is now endlessly happening in here. So comfortable scrollability is realized. So in this simple spiral systems, we put really systematic searchability and the really chaotic scrollability together inside. And one another very important reason is I like to say this library is made by only one bookshelves, because in this here, only one long bookshelves. So it is a really rather childhood dream, but the library itself is really huge and complicated. So I like to say it is made by only one bookshelves. So such kind of 3 different reasons we selected finally these systems. And of course we explain to the client these good contrast of the systems, and we have to explain how it works very well and how it works beyond the usual functions. And this is the model. The 9-meter high bookshelves, and then this is the double height area, entrance area, so bridges. And you will see these spiral bookshelves. So yeah, this is, if you like books, this is a book heaven. And unfortunately, if you don't like books, it is a really book hell. But anyway, it's really exciting place. And in some point, you're going up. And this is a very, very stepping ladder, stairs, so you can sit on to read books here. And the upper stairs is the main part of the library. And then finally, this is realized. And of course, if the one bookshelf is growing to library, then bookshelves is coming outside. So outside is bookshelves and covered by glass. So the whole buildings, they're surrounded by trees, so you cannot see the whole shape of the buildings, but you will see some bookshelves, it's standing inside of the campus. Then you will recognize, oh, this is the library. Like this. And then from inside we have a very huge opening, so inside and outside is now blurring. This is a 9-meter high, big openings with many, many bookshelves. And this is another layers of the bookshelves. And the bridges, in the upper part, bridges is the internet area. And we have skylights on it. And not just the skylights, but we used polycarbonate laminated materials for the ceilings. So the ceilings is, of course, impressing many, many sunlights, but at the same time reflecting to the ceilings again. And as a result, the ceiling itself is cloud-like, shining and floating, and not solid ceilings. And going up, and upper part is with some bridges, and you will see how exciting it is to walk around through these openings here. And you will see many, many layers of the bookshelves. And I think you might notice most of the bookshelves are empty. Now this is open, and this photo is now open. But okay, here, the lower part is now daily use, but the upper part is now still empty. And I hope in the future they are using this upper part. But at the same time, I think it's okay not to use this upper part as a bookshelves, because this is an art university. So this upper part bookshelves could be used as a different use for the installations or for some something different. And in the process of design, I was thinking all the bookshelves should be filled with books. So we thought about using the dummy books to fill with bookshelves. But after completion and after they're using these libraries, then I changed my mind, because if we put books on every bookshelves, then these walls is just a bookshelves. But if this is very, very empty, and the students can use for the installations or some kind of a paintings or something like that, then these bookshelves is for some people bookshelves, but so for some other people different. So it is much more open, cave-like space. It provides some kind of a possibilities to understand or possibilities to behave to it freely. So I hope now not using all the bookshelves as bookshelves, but to provide some kind of a potential for future to use in a different way. But anyway, this kind of a spiral, vanishing walls create your expectations to invite you deep inside and to find your own new inspirations. Sometimes this is happening. Yeah. Very, very beautiful sleeping. And I like this photo because she is now representing how comfortable this space is. So, and but seriously, I have to say, this library, this spiral system is another very good point because it has some intimate gap of the wall. So it has, for example, 3 meter, 4 meter, 5 meter intimate gap of the nice scales. But at the same time, it has many, many openings. So you can feel how big is this library. So in here, in this big library, we can say very, very cozy small scale and very, very big scales are coexisting together. And sometimes you can select the big scale, sometimes you can select the smaller scales. Such kind of a duality of meanings could create a very rich experience, I hope. And again, every time it's happening. But I have to say, I can say the library is the place where students are sleeping. So the new definition of the library, I hope. And I have to say, the Toyo Ito's library has a special place for students to sleep. So it's, yeah, in that point, the Toyo Ito library is better than my library, I have to say. But anyway, yeah, you can see the many layers. And these big numbers is the numbers of the categories. And we design with the graphic designer together this big sign because I don't want to make sign-like sign, but more contemporary art-like sign. Because if you are searching some specific category or some specific book, then it works as signs. But if you don't care about the categories, you're just walking around the library, then you don't care these kind of signs. But it is more like a contemporary arts or nice decorations. So such kind of a duality it has again. And of course, from very far, you can see these numbers. But if you are approaching more closer, then this big number is disappearing, and you will find much more smaller signs. So such kind of a sequence are also designed. So in here, some kind of a various kind of a duality of the scales, small scales, big scales, or the meanings of the bookshelves or the meaning of the signs, such kind of a duality or gradient meanings are precisely created. And I think very, very interesting point of this library is, of course, I designed this library, so I know every corner, every space of this library. But after the completion, when I enter this library, then I got a feeling that I don't know the every part of this library, or behind that wall, something unknown space must be happening. Such kind of a feeling is happening to me. So in here, of course, every space is limited. the square meter is limited. But in your experience, you are walking around and you will find some new unknown space every time you come. That is because these kind of a wall, blocking wall, and opening systems, and infinite layers systems, such kind of a systems created some kind of a expectations and unknown hidden spaces. So the architecture is, of course, the size is limited, and the whole thing is fixed. But if you make some kind of a nice expectations, then you will experience such kind of a endless, rich experience created by your own expectations. And here you will see the reflections of the ceilings. The polycarbonate materials could reflect these bookshelves to upper part. So the ceilings is not just a solid things, but more translucent, transparent existence. So for me, it's really amazing result by this ceilings that this library, I can say, has no ceilings, but just a light is flowing above. It is a kind of a, how to say, dream architecture, because architecture has to have a roof. So for many years, I'd like to create some kind of a architecture without roof. And this is, of course, it has a roof, but it has an experience, the architecture without roof. Or in the box in box house, I created some kind of a architecture with roof, but without roof. The roof is vanishing in the layers of the boxes. In the evening, like this. And this is the photo took by the art photographer. And yeah, this is the cover of my book featuring this library. But I like this photo very much because it is just a photo from outside, but reflecting the trees outside and mixing the inside bookshelves, as if inside this library, some kind of a mixture of the forest and the library is now happening. Of course, this is not happening in actual situations, but it represents the fundamental part of this library in one photo. So I think it's really amazing, the photos. And of course, this is the books, and the text is Japanese, English, bilingual. So you can buy, I think. Okay, anyway. I think I started from the cave-like space, the contrast with the modern architecture and my architecture style, and I extended the cave concept, more open cave by box in box house, or much more like a volume, air of the volumes, and could create the various different spaces by networking, new order. And finally, in this library project, I created some kind of a field of the expectations. And I think, of course, I have now, including the small project and including the Japan and abroad project, 20 project is now moving. And I hope I like to extend such kind of a concept. And at the same time, I don't want to limit it by this concept. I like to explore more and more about the new architecture. But in such a study process, such kind of a primitive attitude or innocent attitude to see architecture as if you don't know anything about architecture is very important power for me. And I like to create more and more something new. Thank you very much.
So one of the great things about tonight is that a lot of students have been helping, and a lot of Japanese students and Asia GSD, but Japan GSD, and they have a reception for us, as you've seen, with sushi and sake. So I'm sure that a lot of people are waiting to go for the sake. But maybe, and I think I talked quite a lot at the beginning. So if there are maybe a couple of questions for, oh, there's one quick hand, Fujimoto-san, and then you can ask more informal questions when we're out there.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I love your architecture projects since the first time that I see it. And I have to say that what I see is a kind of uncertainty and richness that embedded in your architecture project, which tremendously challenges the way that I recognize architecture. And my question is very simple. And I see you generate numerous models to explore the uncertainty and richness in architecture. So generally speaking, how many models do you make for each project? And the most important thing is what kind of criteria that you choose to decide what kind of model you use. And there may be coincidence that two models is slightly different. So how do you choose? Do you feel confused, uncertain, hesitate, or even you always know what you really want and you always determine? Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you very much for such energetic questions. And actually, I don't know how many models we are making, but if you come to my office, it's filled with models. And but I think in the process of design or judging, I don't know what I want. So I saw many models, and I like to find what we are doing, and I like to understand which directions we are going. So the models is not just for the comparisons, but to making many models, then we understand what is happening generally in there. And another thing is making the models or making architecture is like for me, like agriculture, to growing some vegetables, something. And every day, me or my staff is giving waters or checking the models and changing the models, then gradually changing. But you don't know how the vegetables is every day changing, but looks nice or looks a little bit sick or something like that. So I'm watching the models like that, I think. And then finally, one day, this is something I found. Yeah. Is there another?
Thank you. I think indeed you are exploring new architecture, and I found out that instead of you are providing like new freedom of life, it's more about new freedom of architecture, and actually, people have to sacrifice a certain degree of freedom of life for the sake of the freedom of architecture in your building. For example, in those stacked white boxes, if I want to go to the bedroom from the kitchen, there's actually very limited path, I think. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, because if we observe the Japanese tradition, I'm not sure I'm right, that people are willing to spend a lot of time on the life of ritual, on the ritual of life instead of life itself. So maybe the reason that you can create such kind of architecture in Japan is because that Japanese people can afford this kind of lifestyle that we just spoil architecture to manipulate our way of living. Is this true?
Yeah, I think it's true and not true. But of course, in Japan, most of the people like to live in the more conventional, usual house. And but some of the, especially younger generation, like to have more rich experience for their daily life. And then we discuss together. And of course, I could not, how to say, push our proposal to them, and such kind of things is not happening because they can just refuse. But when I discuss with the client, then I find some kind of a nice spirit of life, new spirit of life from them. And then I grew up such kind of a spirit to architecture. Then they can share, sometimes they can share such kind of a, looks like strange, but fitting to their lifestyle. And I hope such kind of a spirit of life, new spirit of life, is, if we can grow it properly, then not only by them, by the client, but the more and more people can share such kind of a new lifestyle or new spirit of lifestyle. So if it is depending on such kind of a fundamental attitude or aspects of the human being, so I hope, I don't want to create just a crazy, strange house, but I like to find the most fundamental, but the most unexpected aspects of human life. So that is the basic attitude.
Thank you, Fujimoto-san. You mentioned that in your library you don't have a special space for students to sleep. So I'm wondering if it's possible to make those shelves, empty shelves, large enough so those students can go sleep in those cave-like cozy spaces. And maybe that can add a little bit of craziness in this dreamy library. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah. But I hope not we provide, but they themselves could create some kind of their cave-like space. Such kind of openness would be nice if the library say okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
I say that it's really wonderful and refreshing to find that there are multiple ways of making architecture, and that hopefully with the work of Fujimoto-san, but also with the other people who will come, there is something about the way in which one can actually start with very simple things in a way, and that these simple things do have and develop incredible levels of complexity and richness and lots of ideas. So I mean, it was as if each one of these projects was a kind of thesis, and that they develop and they have their own arguments and their own life. It's great to also find out that you are living within a kind of situation where there are people who are prepared to pay a lot of money for emptiness. As you say, that's not always the case, because in other cultures people are looking for more and more excess, more and more visuality, more and more richness. So I think that's also a lucky thing, just to be able to find a situation where architecture actually has the capacity to redefine social relations and not to dictate them, but to really hope to unravel or discover new kinds of social relations. Great thanks to all the students who've helped, and in particular Kazuo Neda, who's worked with us to kind of make this event possible, and to Sou Fujimoto. I think if we don't go outside soon, there won't be any sushi or any sake left, because I can hear the people who got in there ahead of us. So thanks again, and please enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.